The night was unusually still as I locked up the cafe where I worked. It was just past midnight, and the streets of our small town were deserted. I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me as I began the short walk home. The streetlights cast an eerie glow, stretching my shadow into a grotesque figure that seemed to mock my growing unease. I'd always been a rational person, but lately, strange things had been happening in town. People spoke in hushed whispers about unexplained noises, fleeting shadows, and an oppressive feeling that seemed to descend after dark. I'd brushed off these stories as small-town superstition, but tonight, something felt different. As I turned onto Maple Street, I noticed a fog rolling in, unusually thick for this time of year. It crept along the ground, swirling around my ankles and obscuring the path ahead. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as an inexplicable sense of dread washed over me. I quickened my pace, my footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. That's when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from behind me. Tap, tap, tap. I spun around, heart racing, but saw nothing but the encroaching fog. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and frightened. No response came, just the continuing tap, tap, tap. I turned back and began to run, the sound seeming to follow me no matter how fast I moved. As I rounded the corner onto my street, I collided with something solid, letting out a scream that pierced the night. "Whoa, easy there." A familiar voice cut through my panic. It was Mr. Jenkins, my elderly neighbor, out walking his dog. "You all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost." I struggled to catch my breath, glancing behind me. The tapping had stopped. I thought someone was following me, I stammered. Mr. Jenkins peered into the fog, his brow furrowed. "Wouldn't surprise me," he muttered. "Strange things have been happening round here lately. Best get home and lock your doors." I nodded, thanking him before hurrying to my house. As I fumbled with my keys, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once inside, I leaned against the door, relief washing over me. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did you think you could escape that easily?" My blood ran cold. I dropped the phone, backing away as if it were a venomous snake. The shadows in my living room seemed to deepen, taking on sinister shapes. I reached for the light switch, but nothing happened when I flipped it. A soft chuckle echoed through the room, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who's there?" I demanded, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Oh, you know who I am," the voice whispered, now right behind me. I whirled around, but there was nothing there. "I've always been here, watching, waiting." I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time. I slammed my bedroom door shut, sliding down against it as tears streamed down my face. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a dream, a hallucination, anything but real. As I sat there, trying to calm my racing heart, I noticed something on my bed, an old, leather-bound book I'd never seen before. With shaking hands, I opened it, revealing pages filled with strange symbols and disturbing illustrations. One page caught my eye. It showed a figure shrouded in fog, with long, spindly fingers reaching out towards a terrified person. The caption read, "The Watcher in the Mist, it follows those marked by fate, never resting, never tiring." A chill ran down my spine as I remembered the fog from earlier, the tapping footsteps that followed me. Was this some sort of sick joke, or was there truth to these pages? I flipped through the book frantically, searching for answers. Each page revealed new horrors, creatures that lurked in shadows, ancient curses, and rituals to ward off evil. But nothing seemed to explain why this was happening to me. A floorboard creaked outside my room, and I froze. Slowly, impossibly, the doorknob began to turn. I pressed my weight against the door, praying it would hold. "You can't hide forever," the voice taunted, now right on the other side of the door. "We have so much to discuss, you and I." "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation clear in my voice. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Want? Oh, my dear, it's not about what I want. It's about what you're destined for. You've been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I asked, dreading the answer. "To see the truth of this world," the voice replied. "The veil between realities is thinning, and you're going to help us break through." Suddenly, the pressure against the door vanished. I waited, hardly daring to breathe, but there was only silence. After what felt like hours, I slowly opened the door, peering out into the darkened hallway. It was empty. I crept downstairs, every shadow making me jump. The living room was as I'd left it, no sign of the intruder. But as I approached the front window, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in the middle of the street, stood a figure shrouded in mist. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. As I watched, paralyzed with fear, it slowly turned its head towards me. Where its face should have been, there was only a swirling void. It raised one spindly arm, pointing directly at me. In that moment, I knew with terrifying certainty that my life would never be the same. Whatever this entity was, whatever it wanted from me, this was only the beginning. The mist began to creep towards my house, tendrils of fog slipping under the door and through cracks in the windows. I backed away, clutching the strange book to my chest. My mind raced, trying to remember any of the protective rituals I'd glimpsed in its pages. As the fog filled my living room, taking shape into twisted, reaching hands, I realized I had a choice to make. I could run, try to escape whatever fate this thing had in store for me. Or I could face it, delve deeper into this nightmare, and try to understand why I had been chosen. The figure outside took a step towards my house, the very ground seeming to warp beneath its feet. The air grew thick, making it hard to breathe. I knew I had only moments to decide. With shaking hands, I opened the book once more, my eyes landing on a page I hadn't noticed before. The words seemed to writhe on the paper, forming and reforming as I tried to read them. But one phrase stood out clearly: to know the truth, one must first embrace the darkness. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Whatever horrors awaited me, whatever truths this entity wanted to reveal, I knew there was no turning back now. The fog enveloped me, and I felt myself being pulled into a reality beyond anything I could have imagined. As the world I knew faded away, replaced by swirling chaos and half-glimpsed terrors, I heard that chilling voice one last time: "Welcome, chosen one. Your journey has only just begun." The darkness closed in, and I found myself falling, tumbling through endless void. Fragments of realities flashed by: grotesque creatures, ancient ruins, and things my mind couldn't even begin to comprehend. I screamed, but no sound escaped my lips. Just when I thought I couldn't take anymore, I landed hard on solid ground. Gasping for breath, I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was in a forest, but not like any I'd ever seen before. The trees towered impossibly high, their bark a sickly, pulsing purple. The ground beneath me squished unpleasantly, more flesh-like than earth. "Where am I?" I whispered, my voice sounding strange and distorted. "Somewhere between," came the reply, that same chilling voice from before. "A realm where nightmares and reality bleed together." I spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The trees themselves appeared to be watching me, their knots and whorls forming faces that leered and grinned. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to keep the fear from my voice. A low chuckle echoed through the twisted forest. "It's not about what we want, child. It's about what you're capable of. You have a gift, a connection to the spaces between worlds. We're here to help you unlock it." As if on cue, the ground began to shift beneath my feet. Roots burst forth, wrapping around my ankles and pulling me down. I struggled, but it was useless. The last thing I saw before being dragged into the pulsing earth was a pair of glowing eyes watching from the shadows. I awoke with a start, back in my own bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, and for a moment, I thought it had all been a terrible dream. But then I saw the leather-bound book on my nightstand, and the deep scratches on my arms where the roots had grabbed me. This was real. All of it. And somehow, I knew that when night fell again, the horrors would return. The entity, the watcher in the mist, wasn't done with me yet. As I sat there, trying to process everything that had happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger, much darker story. What truths awaited me in the realms between reality and nightmare? What was this gift the voice spoke of? And most importantly, how could I hope to survive the terrors that now stalked my every step? As the day wore on, I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every shadow. The normal world seemed thin, fragile, like a veneer that could be stripped away at any moment to reveal the horrors lurking beneath. I knew that when darkness fell, my journey into the unknown would continue. But for now, all I could do was wait and wonder what nightmares the coming night would bring. As dusk approached, I felt a growing sense of dread. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind, each terrifying moment etched into my memory. I paced my living room, the leather-bound book clutched tightly to my chest. Its weight felt like an anchor, tethering me to a reality I was no longer sure existed. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and bruise. I watched as shadows lengthened, stretching across my lawn like grasping fingers. The air grew thick, heavy with an unnatural stillness that set my nerves on edge. Just as the last light faded, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Are you ready to continue your journey?" Before I could respond, a low mist began to seep under my door. My heart raced as I watched it coalesce, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. The Watcher had returned. "You can't run from your destiny," its voice echoed in my mind. "The veil is thinning. You must embrace your role." I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping against hope that when I opened them, this nightmare would be over. But when I looked again, the mist figure stood mere inches from me, its void-like face a swirling abyss that threatened to pull me in. Without warning, icy tendrils wrapped around my wrists. The world tilted and spun, reality fracturing like shattered glass. I felt myself falling, tumbling through layers of existence I never knew existed. I landed hard on cold, damp stone. Groaning, I pushed myself up, taking in my new surroundings. I was in some sort of ancient chamber, its walls covered in writhing, eldritch symbols that hurt my eyes to look at directly. Torches flickered with an otherworldly green flame, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. "Welcome, seer," a raspy voice called out. I spun around to see a figure emerge from the darkness. It was humanoid, but wrong in ways I couldn't quite define. Its limbs were too long, joints bending at impossible angles. Its face was a mass of tentacles, constantly shifting and rearranging. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the cold stone wall. What are you?" I managed to choke out. The creature let out a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am the keeper of truths, guardian of the space between realities. And you, my dear, are the key we've been waiting for." "Key to what?" I asked, fear and curiosity warring within me. The keeper glided closer, its tentacles writhing excitedly. "To the Great Unraveling, of course. The merging of all realities into one glorious chaos. But first, you must see. You must understand." Before I could react, one of its tentacles shot out, pressing against my forehead. Pain exploded behind my eyes as images flooded my mind. I saw vast, incomprehensible beings that existed beyond time and space. Civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. Realities colliding and merging, creating monstrous hybrid worlds. I screamed, the knowledge threatening to tear my mind apart. Just when I thought I couldn't take anymore, the visions stopped. I found myself on my knees, gasping for breath. "You see now, don't you?" the keeper asked, its voice almost gentle. "The fragility of what you once thought was reality. The infinite possibilities that exist just beyond the veil." I nodded weakly, unable to deny the truths that had been seared into my brain. But why me? Why was I chosen for this? The keeper's tentacles rippled in what might have been a shrug. "Some humans are born with a sensitivity to the spaces between. You've always felt it, haven't you? The wrongness in certain places, the whispers just beyond hearing. We've been watching you, waiting for you to awaken to your true potential." As if on cue, the symbols on the walls began to glow. They peeled themselves off the stone, swirling around me in a dizzying dance. I felt power coursing through me, ancient and terrible. "Embrace it," the keeper urged. "Let the knowledge flow through you. Become the conduit for the Great Unraveling." Part of me wanted to resist, to cling to the safe, mundane world I'd known. But a larger part, a part one was only now discovering, yearned for this. For understanding, for power, for the ability to see beyond the veil that had kept me blind for so long. I closed my eyes, letting the eldritch energies wash over me. When I opened them again, the world had changed. I could see the threads of reality, the weak points where dimensions bled into one another. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I had the power to tear those holes wide open. The keeper made a sound of satisfaction. "You are ready. Go forth, seer. Prepare the way for the Great Unraveling." With a gesture, a portal opened before me. Through it, I could see my own living room. But it looked different now, overlaid with shimmering lines of energy and possibility. I stepped through, my mind reeling with the implications of what I'd learned and what I'd become. The portal closed behind me, leaving me alone in my house. But I knew I'd never truly be alone again. The voices of countless realities whispered in my mind, urging me to action. I picked up the leather-bound book, its contents now clear to me. It was a guidebook, a manual for navigating the spaces between and weakening the barriers that kept realities separate. As I flipped through the pages, a plan began to form in my mind. I knew what I had to do, the rituals to perform, the places of power to visit. The Great Unraveling had begun, and I was its harbinger. Part of me, the part that clung to my old life, screamed in horror at what I was contemplating. But that voice grew fainter with each passing moment, drowned out by the cosmic truths that now filled my being. I gathered what I needed: candles, chalk, herbs that no longer grew in this reality, and prepared to begin the first ritual. As I drew the complex sigils on my living room floor, I felt the fabric of reality strain around me. A sudden pounding on my front door made me jump. "Hello? Are you in there?" It was Mr. Jenkins, my elderly neighbor. "There's something strange going on outside. The sky, it's not right." I ignored him, focusing on completing the ritual. The pounding grew more insistent, but it was background noise compared to the rushing in my ears as power built up around me. "Please," Mr. Jenkins called out, his voice cracking with fear. "Something's happening. We need help." For a moment, I hesitated. Images of my old life flashed before my eyes: my job at the cafe, lazy Sundays in the park, the simple pleasures I'd taken for granted. Was I really willing to sacrifice all of that? To sacrifice everyone and everything I'd ever known? But then I remembered the visions the Keeper had shown me. The infinite wonder and terror of the multiverse. The Great Unraveling wasn't just inevitable, it was necessary. A cosmic reset that would birth new realities beyond imagination. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I knew Mr. Jenkins couldn't hear me. "But this is bigger than any of us." I completed the final sigil, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, a rift opened in the center of my living room. Through it, I could see swirling chaos, fragments of other worlds, beings that defied description. The pounding on my door stopped abruptly, replaced by a scream of terror that cut off mid-shriek. Outside, I could hear car alarms blaring, people shouting in confusion and fear. The Great Unraveling had begun. I stood at the edge of the rift, watching as tendrils of other realities began to seep into our world. Strange, luminous plants burst through my floorboards. The walls rippled like water, occasionally revealing glimpses of alien landscapes. I knew that all around the globe, other rifts would be opening. The barriers between worlds, weakened by my ritual, were collapsing. Chaos and transformation would spread like wildfire. As the familiar world crumbled around me, I felt a surge of exhilaration. I was no longer just a witness to the Great Unraveling, I was its architect. The terror I'd felt seemed like a distant memory, replaced by an almost giddy sense of anticipation. What new wonders would emerge from this cosmic reshuffling? What terrors? And what would my role be in the strange, hybrid reality that was taking shape? I stepped closer to the rift, feeling its pull. Behind me, what remained of my old life disintegrated. Before me lay infinite possibilities, realities beyond imagining. With a final look back at the world I'd known, I took a deep breath and stepped into the swirling chaos. As reality fractured and reformed around me, I couldn't help but smile. The journey I'd begun on that dark, fog-shrouded night had led me here, to the precipice of a new existence. Whatever horrors or wonders awaited me, I was ready to face them. For I was the seer, the key, the herald of the Great Unraveling. And my story, like the new reality taking shape around me was only just beginning. As I merged with the swirling energies of the rift, my consciousness expanded. I saw countless versions of myself, living out different lives in different realities. Some were happy, some tragic, some utterly alien. But all of them, I realized, had led to this moment. The multiverse itself seemed to pulse around me, acknowledging my role in its transformation. I was no longer just a spectator or even a participant in this cosmic drama. I had become something more, a focal point for the energies of creation and destruction. As the last vestiges of my old reality crumbled away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The fear, the doubt, the clinging to a limited existence, all of it fell away like a discarded shell. In that moment of transcendence, I understood the true nature of the Great Unraveling. It wasn't an end, but a new beginning. A chance for all of existence to be reborn, reshaped into something greater than the sum of its parts. And I, the once frightened person who had run from shadows in the night, would be there to guide it. To nurture the new realities sprouting from the fertile chaos of the old. As I dissolved into the cosmic tapestry, becoming one with the energies of creation, I had one final, exhilarating thought. The true horror story wasn't the one I had lived through, with its mysterious figures and eldritch revelations. The true horror had been the limited, blinkered existence I'd accepted as reality for so long. Now, free from those constraints, I was ready to write a new story, one of infinite possibilities, of terror and wonder beyond imagination. And as the last threads of my old self merged with the cosmic whole, I whispered to the swirling chaos around me, "Let the true story begin."